My first problem is the amplifier is backwards. The power needs to go this way, the signal needs to go that way. This has to do a big crisscross action. What that means is I need to kind of work my way up then. The power wire can go up high, the signal wire I want to go down low. First thing I want to look at is the RCA because that is on the farthest side here. The 4000 series, one of the nice things about it is a nice flat RCA with small heads, meaning this piece here is very narrow. They are directional. It says here source. There's also arrows on this. If that happens to fall off, follow the arrows. On the ends here it says front, rear, sub. I want to run these along here. That way I can have the speaker wire come out next to them and the sub wire come out this way. Keep this nice and tight up against the amplifier. First thing I want to do is put some heat shrink over these ends so I know what is front, rear, and sub, because this is 6 inches away from it, and by the time I see this, these are going to be all taped up and hard to figure out. This heat shrink fits on here super tight. You don't need a lot of heat in order to shrink it down enough to make it permanent. That's kind of key. You don't want to heat these up too much because this is really thin wire. You don't want to stretch any of the wire inside of it. Looking at the back side, these zip ties here are all facing into the amplifier. That's because we're going to be moving this way with the zip ties. So we want to make sure this hole stays open because we'll be coming back through this more than likely with these speaker wires. That gets our signal portion of this done. One thing I want to do is grab the bass knob before I forget it. That is going to be coming up this side. I love to forget these. Bass knob is in. I won't forget about it now. While I'm over on this end though, I'm going to turn on my high pass crossovers, dial them into what looks like 80, turn my gains all the way down. And that's our pre-tune so that when we turn on the amplifier, it's safe to turn on and it's not going to damage any of the speakers. For the subwire, we're going to run a dual 12 gauge wire. I like to run a separate 12 gauge inside of the loom. It makes it a lot more flexible than if you use a joined 12 gauge. We've put our ferrules on, covered our ends in heat shrink. We'll get it installed in the amplifier. This is where having their long Allen key is very helpful. I always wait until the wires are ran, zip tied in place before I put the ends on, mainly because these bends tend to shrink the wire in different directions, and you want to make sure that at the end here they're the same length. The nice thing about using ferrules on the end here is that they don't like to touch. I mean, you could do this, I suppose, but if they're just like normal like this, they're not inclined to touch one another. And it just gives it a more finished end. Subwire is in and ran. Next, we're gonna move on to our speaker wires. First up is the rears going this way. We're going to run those out like this so they can just go right up to the rear speakers. For the rear speaker wires, because they're gonna be out where you can see them, they're gonna be on their own. I've twisted together some black and purple, green and purple, and then put them in some flexible tubing. Put color indicators on the ends. Purple is the passenger rear, green is the driver's rear. That means that this is the left and this is the right. And on this, left is here, right is here. They're going to be backwards. If we wanted them to come out the right direction, it's just colors. We could just flip these RCAs upside down and make right, left, and left, right. Simply by doing this. And now they are correct and we can come out and go the direction we want with these. Visualizing where I want the power wire to come along in here, I think this is going to be the spot for this wire, and then I'll match it on this side and that'll give me enough room to put my other wire right between it. For the front, we twisted together some white and black and gray and black. Loomed over the first 12 inches or so. It's going to get integrated in with this wire to go forward. With the speaker wires all in, I have remote turn on left that's going to be coming over here. Once that comes over here, this whole portion of it will be covered in flex loom. But I have my ground that needs to come out as well as my power. I'm going to, I don't know if I'm going to put a riser here or not. I think I should. These are the things that you grapple with as you're trying to put it together. I have the height because this goes up. But first I have to get my wires covered in flex loom. That takes a couple minutes. That's one of the time consuming things of doing this, is putting on all this braided stuff. So I'll do that, and while I'm doing it, it's typically when I'm thinking about this type of thing. I put a 1/2 inch lifter here to raise the power wire up as it comes out of here and goes along. I'm also switching my drill bit from the 9/64 up to the 5/32. This drill bit will be for a fatter, longer zip tie than the little 4-inch zip ties we use. That's where our first hole will be. Drill this thing out. Power wire zip tied up. Lastly, we have the remote turn on wire. That's going to come across here and be in this area right here. Remote wire has a ferrule, has some braided sleeving over it, just long enough to get it over into this area here. Coming up from behind the power wire. Feed it into the hole and tighten it up. All the wires are ran. I can put the top back on this, and it's a good time to do it now. So the way this is going to be mounted, we'll never be able to get back to it unless we pull the whole amplifier down, which doesn't sound like fun. We have to blow this area off in here. That is one of the side effects of drilling hundreds of holes, is that these little pieces all get caught up inside of this. That's the last step as far as the wiring goes. The only thing I have left is to cover this wire, this run, which is the RCA, the remote, and the 2 speaker wires with braided loom. The RCA and speaker wire are all loomed up. Everything is covered. The amplifier is now all done and ready to get into the car. As discussed earlier, what I'm gonna do is zip tie these all together and then use these little Christmas tree zip ties to hold the wire up into place in the rear deck. But the only way that'll happen is if I get it into the car. Hey, can you give me a hand? Perfect. Here's the screws. Okay. If you want to get those first 2 in the back there, that would be cool. And I will hold this.
Just don't drop it in my face.
I will not drop it on your face. I'm using both hands. So with the amplifier bolted into place, we have a clear shot of all the gains and crossovers, and that fan, that's that silver spot right there. This will get a ton of air, no issues. Now I need to connect this speaker wire up and run those across, which means I get to crawl back into the trunk. What I want to do is get all the wire ran to this side, and then I'll go to that side. But getting it run forward like this allows me to get my bundle all connected and zip tied into place. Just makes things a little bit easier. With the back seat out and this side panel missing, it gives us access to the harness for those factory amplifiers. If you don't want to zip tie them up into the car and you just want to remove them all together, there's 2 harnesses located behind this side, and you can do that. And that's the plan. Zip ties up into place, very similar to the factory that we have all going through here, except these are black instead of white, so they blend it a little better. I'll repeat that on the other side, and then I can hook up these speaker wires here to the speaker, and I can start getting the back of this car back together. Good times. The rear deck is back in, the wires are all ran. let's take a look. Power wire with the Christmas trees in, like we were showing. The speakers are connected, the other speaker is connected, and our signal wire is also Christmas treed and zip tied up into place. Our sub wire comes out of this back corner here. This is a hard plastic with carpet, so we were able to just drill a hole and have it come out. This area is done.